Maybe we should jump to number 4 about the St. Pete Beach financial support. I have a copy of the article.
Yeah.
With all my red highlights.
Okay.
Then I have all my notes from my
analysis.
dental conversation with the mayor, which went very well.
Good. Well, maybe I was just gonna open it. Commissioner Doran, you probably saw the article too.
Mm-hmm.
And oh, hey, Demar. I was just gonna open up with 2 comments. One, that Abhishek Dayal and Cassandra Borchers, who are here, who helped put together the submissions to the FTA that we did back in 2017. Well, Abhishek wasn't here in 2017, and they can talk to you more about the process that we've gone through. But we have confirmed with the federal government that St. Pete Beach will not be a financial partner in the direct funding of the Central Avenue BRT project. Second, what precipitated the article was a proposed resolution by the St. Pete Beach Commission to oppose the project that had a number of things that were not correct about the project listed in it. Abhishek sent an email to the mayor as soon as we found out that was going to happen, which I was actually informed by Mayor Kreisman in St. Petersburg. We were not told about it. And they deferred. They voted 3-1 to defer action on the resolution until April 9th, when they've offered an opportunity for PSTA to come and talk to them. I know, Chair Long, you had a conversation with Mayor Johnson this morning. Maybe you want to just describe what you talked about, and then we can answer any questions.
First of all, I think it's important to remember that in this length of time that we've been dealing with this project, the city of St. Pete Beach has had 4 mayors. I think they've had 3 city managers. I'm not sure about that number, but I know they've had more than 1. And they've had changes on their council. So it's hard to keep the project moving forward with everybody having the same information all the time, because it's been a revolving door down there. And so I did share with him that yes, we did have them in our initial application because we felt like over time, and as they were more educated, and as the issue of public transportation kept evolving, that they would be willing partners. That has not happened. We are still moving forward with the plan, but the plan continues to morph and evolve and change as we get new information, correct? At the time we started, we made the decision based on data that was the largest ridership and the place where we could make the most difference for our community.
Yes, that's true.
So we try to make data-driven decisions. We absolutely have had communication with the feds, letting them know that there is no funding from St. Pete Beach. And you said that we had verification of that back. But I didn't see that in your, I saw you respond to them, Abhishek.
Yes.
I did not see her acknowledge it, did she?
She did acknowledge receipt of my email and the funding commitments that were noted in that email.
The new funding commitment.
Yes.
And that's why I was so mad at Tracy McManus when she and I were going back and forth. She's usually a much better, more thoughtful reporter than that. And she just told one side of the story, the one that would be sensational.
Well, and again, I think we're going to try to get even clearer validation by the federal government soon as possible. But from the get-go, the process we've gone through with the federal government, Cassandra can elaborate on this more, we have always described it as a financial plan and not ever promised or obligated the city of St. Pete Beach, or really any of the funding partners today, except for ourselves, the funding that's in there. It's a plan, and we don't even have to have committed funding, which I told the Tampa Bay Times to do, until we actually receive the money from the feds sometime later this year. So we have been well aware of the city of St. Pete Beach's unwillingness to provide financial support. Like you said, I think appropriately, we've had an ongoing discussion for now almost 4 years with different officials. I did an inventory. We had 10 meetings just last year alone with commissioners, new commissioners, city manager, about the transit service they already have, plus the proposal.
But now they have a new city manager again.
I think April 9th will be the first meeting.
He told me that he wasn't able to come to our meeting today because he had a meeting with the new city manager, and he's putting this on the list of things to chat with him about.
Yeah.
So I know I'm not crazy when I say I clearly can track in my head at least 3 city managers in the time that we've been working with them.
Mm-hmm.
3 city managers and 4 mayors.
Anyway, Sandra, would you like to say anything?
Well, I think the financial plan and the Small Stars application both point to that this was an option as part of our financial plan. And so even the descriptions in the financial plan describe it as potentially from the city, potentially from private donations. You know, it became a placeholder for what was going to happen out there on the beach. And I think it was an appropriate way for us to address the financial plan in the fiscal year 19 submittal, in that we didn't have any new news from the fiscal year 18 submittal. And it left it loose enough that we could see how it played out in the design, with Abhishek coming on, with new city managers, with new elected officials, and we could let that local conversation happen without the feds being too concerned about the total financial package. I think we have more information now as we start to get ready for the fiscal year 20 package. And as Brad mentioned, when we have financial partners, we describe their participation in 3 possible ways. The first is planned, which means we could be in negotiations, we could be discussing, it could be an option. The second is budgeted, meaning they've put it in their future documents. And the third is committed. So at the stages that we've been at as we've submitted to the feds, we've been in that planned phase where in the early submittals, the only thing that was committed, and the only thing that was committed when we received our rating, was our own money. Now, as we move into the fiscal year 20, we need to show the feds that we have the commitments and the documentation of those commitments. And so I think we're in an appropriate place for the federal process for a project like this, where each year our commitments become stronger. It doesn't mean that every single one is in the same place. It means that the project as a whole is moving forward. So we've had progress on the St. Pete, the city of St. Pete side, and that was a good news for this past submittal. If we haven't made progress on St. Pete Beach yet, then we have an opportunity to modify the financial plan before it's finalized.
So what happens if they just decide they don't want to be a part of it? And does that destroy our whole proposal, or can we go back to doing what we thought about in the beginning, stopping it at 150 50th and forget you.
So, as our understanding is, most of the, in fact, not all of the entire corridor is on FDOT right away. So we wouldn't be on the city right away to begin with. From the ridership perspective, we do understand there's still plenty of demand at a lot of the resorts and hotels, which it generates for our Central Avenue trolley anyways, and so we would still continue to pursue that option of going through that entire route and making sure it's on DOT right away to begin with.
So we would do that even if they don't want anything to do with it?
Well, and I think that's the question, that's the question we're gonna have a discussion with them on April 9th, is, what they said at their last meeting, what the resolution said was, one, they want to confirm that they don't want to have a financial
Right.
commitment. Number two is they would like a vehicle that would be smaller than the one the picture that we've been using in the paper. And that has been a consistent message by the few citizens that come to every meeting and are opposing the project. And number three, they don't want traffic to be increased because of the project, and they don't want any elimination or narrowing of the lanes on the street. We think we can go on April 9th and confirm all four of those that we have listened to them, and we are willing to adjust the project so that all four of those concerns that they have are met. Abhishek has a team of consultants and has done a number of traffic analyses that have shown that the traffic congestion will not be increased by the project. There is never been a plan to change the lanes in St. Pete Beach on Gulf Boulevard. The BRT in that area will just run with the regular traffic, and we're looking at a smaller vehicle now. It sounded, as we discussed, they change all the time, but those were the concerns that were addressed, that were raised, and so whether they're willing to either modify a resolution because we've made those changes, I guess is an open question. Hopefully they would, but even if they wouldn't, that would not require us to change the project.
So we would still do it whether they were paying anything or not, and whether they wanted it or not.
Yes. We have a new funding plan that still covers the projected costs without their funding. We might still try to pursue some in-kind or capital funding perhaps in the future by some of the hotels, some of the private businesses, but not the city. Not the city.
So how do the hotels feel about that? Do we know? Could we get one of them to come with us on the 9th?
Well,
There's the big taxpayers down there.
we've been working with the resorts, Don Cesar, we've had meetings with Trade Winds, and, they understand what the project can do for them, so we've been working with them on the design of the projects.
Can we get one of them to come with us, talk to the council?
I'm not sure. We've asked many times for them to join us, and they have said to us, which I think is pretty much the case, that they're not sure if their attendance will help. It might actually hurt.
Well,
They pay a lot of taxes.
but that's part of the rub on St. Pete Beach. There's a constant conflict between the big resorts and the citizens who live in the private homes.
Right.
So when it comes
Kinda late
time,
for them.
when it comes time to elect their commissioners and their mayor, that's a pretty fine line that you have to walk. Otherwise, you make the hoteliers mad or you make the citizens mad.
I mean, Robin Solly, the executive director of the Tampa Bay Beaches Chamber, Robin Miller, I think her name is now, She joined us in Washington D.C. advocating for the project. Her Tampa Bay Beaches Chamber last year, I believe, took a vote in favor of.
Yeah, but her
supporting-
guy, Doug, that just got on the council, he wasn't very positive.
I know he wasn't. Doug was, the Tampa Bay Beaches Chamber at one point several years ago voted to allow Doug to work specifically to advocate on behalf of the project and not work for Robin for a period of time. He did that. And then when we met with him shortly after he got appointed to the commission back in January, he was very positive, I would say, completely positive. Understood the value of it. So I think Abhishek and I were both surprised to hear his comments at the meeting.
He says,
I think he said nobody wants it, or he doesn't know anybody wants it.
I mean, his comment in the paper is when they talk about it in generalities, like, well, there's about 80 people at this stop that goes to Pass a Grill, and well, what is about, do you actually have ridership numbers? Was his quote in the paper.
Yes.
So,
There is a, in my mind, unrelated, but obviously they believe it's related, concern that has been significantly debated over the last several years with the trolley, the Central Avenue trolley, which runs to Pass a Grill.
oh yeah, they don't like, the mayor talked about that this morning, that it's too big and it makes too much noise.
Right, so we are also addressing that issue by procuring smaller Jolly Trolley-like trolleys. I don't know if they'll be any less noisy, but I think, but they'll be smaller and cuter. That's one of their requirements, to be cute and more tourist-oriented. So that's trying to mitigate their concerns there. We have proposed golf carts, proposed elimination of the service down there, smaller shuttles. And they don't want to pay for anything. So on and on discussions with the issue in Pass a Grill. That issue is, we showed them the data from our ridership, and we even conducted a survey fully at our expense of the riders going to Pass a Grill, and identified that 80 people a day, on average, ride down to that residential community Pass a Grill, down to and almost all of them go to the Hurricane Restaurant and that where the commercial quarter is the end. So the issue
Well,
is
that's significant if you think about 80 more cars going down there.
oh
You
yes,
can barely get down there anymore with all the construction.
yes, and then up until December 31st, this past December, when Mr. Izzo was put onto the commission, the previous council member, Falkenstein, Richard Falkenstein, who has a ownership or part ownership in the Hurricane Restaurant, was an avid supporter of maintaining his workers and guests take the trolley. It just has to travel through a residential community to get down there to the southern end, where there's not very much ridership. There's some, but not very much ridership. And it goes through all these very expensive home areas. They had a construction project going on for a number of years, or more than a year, where all the traffic, not just the buses, but all the traffic had to be rerouted through very small residential streets and go over like dirt construction paths. And the residents complained about the trolleys creating dust and the trucks and everything creating dust. So it's been a real challenge over the last couple of years, and a lot of debate back and forth. That's where that issue came. We presented the data as best that our ridership counts and surveys, and they citizens that talk to the commissioners just don't believe it. That's the only thing I can say. They don't think we're telling them what they think is the case. I don't know.
Well, they're welcome to their opinion.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, I mean, I'm glad you had a good conversation with the mayor today. I know there's another commissioner, Ward Brzezowski.
Ward, he's a good guy.
He is. They're all good people. He said it to me. He would be supportive of the project just as long as there was no funding and the vehicles are smaller.
Yeah, well, everybody wants everything free,
Yes.
and there ain't no free lunch, just the bottom line.
So I'll make a case, I think, on April 9th and see what they decide to do as far as a resolution or not. But I think otherwise the project is in good stead. I mean, actually, you can clarify that. But
Well, the other thing that I think is important to add into our narrative, Brad, is we can't fix the fact that this is a built-out county and we're 40 years behind in terms of doing public transportation planning. I mean, that's just a given. So in order to make things better, things will change. Now, the key is how do we make those changes in a palatable way that people will embrace and use? Well, we can't do that without additional dollars because, I mean, I think that's very powerful when you point out that our total budget is 80 million, but a really good, efficient, and cost-effective transit agency the size of ours has 2 to 2.5 times that amount of money, like about 200 million. I mean, you don't get the frequency and the efficiency of the system unless you have volume,
right. Right.
because it's not dependable otherwise.
So in terms of this project, though, so the feds don't care whether they want it or not? They couldn't make an appeal to the feds to say, we don't want this going through our town?
Well, the FTA in our discussions with them, they want to make sure that any commitments that are needed, all the stakeholders, they are all in, which they are. So as far
In
as the
terms of money.
FDOT, as far as
Yeah.
the city of St. Pete, so they're all in. As far as the physical improvements, again, as I mentioned, most of the route, if not all, is on either FDOT right away or the city of St. Pete right away. So we should be okay from that front as well.
So it wouldn't matter if the city mounted a anti-bus thing and told the FDA that they don't want this.
Well, we would certainly want their support.
Well, we want their support, but they haven't been all that encouraging so far. And by the way, if they say no, we need to do a referendum and make them pay for it. I mean, this is ridiculous, you know?
I think as Abhishek said, it would obviously be better if they supported it.
Right.
Certainly FTA looks for community support. Some of the, not to my knowledge from St. Pete Beach, but some of the anti-citizens have already contacted the FTA in Washington DC, of course. We just met with them in Washington 2 weeks ago, and they were extremely positive about the progress the project had made, the community support we did have. We had a very positive meeting recently in the city of St. Petersburg. They're all in. I mean, I don't think the FTA meeting couldn't have gone better. They're talking about trying to get us the funding as soon as possible. You know, so it seems like all systems are go. Obviously, a city writing a resolution would not be positive,
Right.
but as Abhishek said, officially, they don't care where you get the funding, as long as you have the funding committed.
Well, I'm not talking about the funding.
But the other point that I would like to make is that somehow in our conversations with them, it seems to me that we ought to be stressing this decision is not about right now and today. It's really a decision for the future of our county.
Yeah. And FDA, I mean, Abhishek has a lot of experience in Phoenix and well. They know that they are working on projects all over the country, and they know that there's not one project that is 100% all citizens supporting every piece of the project. So they have that experience and understanding.
Interestingly enough, when the project gets built and everybody's tickled pink to be able to move around in
Right.
a more better way, then they want more.
Yeah.
So I don't suppose there's any possibility of making these electric vehicles.
Well, yes. I mean, that's one of the benefits
That's
of
one
a
of the
smaller
things he
vehicle.
talked about.
Is if we make it a smaller vehicle, we can make them electric, zero emission.
That's a lot quieter.
Yeah, and actually, I think the mayor even he brought that up with you.
He did.
Yeah.
He brought it up with me too. So that was positive.
Yeah.
All right, so we have to really get our act together for the night.
So, how much does it cost us to run this? It's a random question. I know it doesn't make any difference, but what does it cost us to run it down St. Pete Beach? As opposed to just stopping?
Oh.
Not that that's
Um,
necessarily an option, I take it.
Same or
Well, depending on how, the length of it,
Yeah.
it could potentially cost less, but to keep the frequency, I mean, right now, it's,
It's what,
I don't know what the difference is right now. I mean, we could run those numbers if you wanted us to.
one of
It's
the
not
challenges to
really-
this whole thing was we developed a bunch of proposals to not run the current service down to Paso Grill, but
Right.
stop it at the Don Cesar. We don't save any money if the trolley goes down to the Don Cesar and sits there, because we still pay the bus driver to sit there, and then to go back and just not go down there. And so we can't identify really savings to the city or to PSTA by not along this way. And that's sort of the similar sort of old challenge. If we did not go all the way down Gulf Boulevard, the savings would not be, there would be some savings probably, but not proportional to losing all that ridership from the hotels, I guess.
Okay. Well, this has been an ongoing discussion with the board about the cities that are not part of the
Yeah.
ad valorem tax. And
Richard Bennett, our beach representative, called me this morning and said that he got a call from the city manager of Treasure Island wanting to know whether we were gonna make them pay in some way. I told him to have the city manager call me, but I haven't gotten a call yet. But
well, you could be proactive and call him.
yeah. I will. They want to know. They've heard about it.
Well, they're all gonna hear about it, and Janelle Irwin wants to talk to me today about the proposed 5-cent gas tax. So that's another issue.
Well, speaking of that, that's our next agenda item here to talk about.
I guess my concern with that, Brad, is that until we have our discussions with the county, and Brad and you and Barry and
You had
Whit,
another meeting last week, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, they had another meeting last week, and the hiccup in the county about getting that scheduled, I don't know if Gary told you that, is because integral to the solution is work that, Raheem has to do, and he had a death in his family and had to go back and forth to India twice in a very short length of time, and it took him literally out of the office for almost
Almost a
3
month.
weeks,
Yeah.
almost a month. So
Okay.
getting him back up to speed and putting the pieces together has
The thing
been-
is also having to work out the interlocal before we pass it.
Correct. And the other piece
Oh, with
Getting the
cities.
cities to
Oh,
agree
yeah.
to.
is that wise to move down that path when we know that it's not sustainable? It doesn't really fix anything long-term. And does it compromise our ability to do a referendum for a penny?
I don't think that compromises it as much as the referendum for the cities that aren't participating. Because that's something that people, we're the only ones that have to do with the gas tax, and most people in the county are not even gonna notice that we did it. I think. The other one where they all have to vote on that, I can see them saying even 2 years later, didn't you guys just get an increase in your funding? What do you want another cent sales tax now if you just,
Oh, that's my,
You know.
that's my worry.
but the gas tax is not something that they have to vote on.
Right.
That's just us.
Correct. But they do have to agree to an interlocal.
Well, the cities do, this, but not the
Correct.
citizens.
Right, I get that. To me, it's more productive to just go after the dollars from the bed tax.
Not while Jeff Brandis is standing in the way. Unless you
I
know
don't think
something I
he's-
don't.
I don't think he's standing in the way of us taking it right off the top.
You don't?
I don't think he's the principal opponent to that. I think some of the hoteliers that are on the TDC got more, would be more concerned about that. And maybe the city, the mayor's, or the infrastructure raise, whatever.
Well,
Utilities.
the Rays can come and tell us if they have a problem with that. They haven't spoken to us in years. They can go fly a kite. Excuse me, feeling
Well-
feisty this morning.
We talked, Barry, Whit, and I talked about all of those options. I spoke to them that not only, Whit primarily kind of laid out the priorities about expanded service and the value of connecting workforce development, affordable housing, and all these things with strong multimodal transportation corridors.
What Gary wants to do.
And he was very interested in all that. And I said, that's all awesome for the long term. For the short term, we need some support, maybe even if it's only stopgap, to keep us from reducing the limited service we already have,
Which could be the guess.
which could be the gas tax. I had floated out there a $5 million number, which is approximately what the gas tax would be to the county if they kept the interlocal in place with the cities, like the current gas tax, where 40% goes to the cities. You give 40% to the cities, the county keeps 60%, that keeps everybody the same, and then 50-50 of the county's piece goes to PSTA, and 50% goes to the transportation fund. That balances both the transit and the road funds for a couple of years at $5 million each, about. That's how we kind of came up with that. Whit had sort of a different idea about giving PSTA all of it for a period of time, and then not funding it. Then switching it to the roads. So we talked about both those options.
Well, I think,
Barry kind of liked my idea better, but
well,
I don't know.
yeah.
Maybe I'm biased. Sorry, Whit.
mean, I see where Whit's coming from, but then if no other form of funding comes through, we're kind of stuck giving that whole
Right,
60% to PSTA when we need it ourselves.
right.
Because you're not gonna take it back after 3, 4 to 5 years, unless there's something else coming in here.
Yeah, I think Commissioner Long, you asked about a loan. I think Debbie over there responded with,
No, we need to pay that off.
we couldn't pay it back. So, what I wanted to cover on this action item here today was that the the plan that we're coming up with for the board meeting. Again, we have public meetings about our proposed service reductions on April 10th and then at the board meeting itself, some folks wanted an evening opportunity versus the morning. So on April 24th at the board meeting, there will likely be some citizens there concerned about the reductions. Based on the last PSTA meeting we just had last week, I don't think there's, I think there will be certainly support by the PSTA board not to make the reductions and at least put those off while these discussions with the county continue. So what we've at least conceptually developed is that we would bring to the PSTA board 2 resolutions, an option A and an option B. An option A would be to implement the service reductions in June as planned. And option B would be to not implement the service reductions in June. To not cut the service and to maintain the service as is, currently supporting it with PSTA reserves, with the understanding that in May, at the end of May, when PSTA and all in the counties and the cities all follow the budget process, Debbie will be presenting to you the assumptions that PSTA is including in the budget for next year, because we have to present a draft budget to the PSTA board in June. And we need to have a assumption on the revenues that we'll have in June. So that gives, from today, it gives us 2 months to have those discussions with the county, and really through the summer before we have to adopt a budget for 2020 to know whether we are just putting off the cuts until September, or till next year's budget, or whether we can avoid not having to cut the service at all.
Right.
So that's our idea. It sounded like certainly the PSA board was predominantly in favor of allowing some more discussions to continue and not make the cuts.
Okay. Is that it?
Debbie or Cassandra, did I say anything wrong? Okay.
So
Meanwhile, we
now
continue to try to save some money. Yeah.
we've already covered this, right, pretty much?
Well, yeah, you can see on the April 24th agenda, we'd have that service adjustment discussion right up front,
Yep.
right at the beginning.
Okay.
That might delay David Banther's recognition. I don't know. I don't know if he may not want to stick around for
Well,
that.
why don't we do
Why don't we
this,
just do
why
that
don't we do
first?
We
this
could.
first and then,
2 minutes.
there's no need for him to sit through all of that when he doesn't have any vote on it anyway.
Right, right.
Well, why don't we just do his thing first?
That sounds like a good idea. Yeah, and that's pretty much the main item on the agenda.
Yeah.
And there'll be some consent items, I think, that'll go to the finance committee, but think it's also the date of a Pinellas County picnic, so we.
Gives us a great excuse to get out of the picnic. Thank you.
Don't like parades, don't like picnics.
I don't like outside. I don't like sun. Period. What can I say?
Good read that.
No.
I don't think I've ever seen you with a hat.
That's because you don't see me out in the sun.
It was hilarious. We did this thing on Clearwater Beach, and she's all got the long sleeve shirt down to here, long pants and sneakers, and man, I was dying. I just had on a pair of shorts and a T-top, tank top. I thought I was gonna die. It was so hot.
You should. Well, I got a bunch of sunburns when I was a kid, and I used to go to the beach with long sleeve shirts and long pants and build a tent on the beach so I could sit under it, because I get really sick when I get out in the sun.
Yes, you're so fair.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't take that chance anymore.
Probably very nice.
So in a
Oh.
few short hours, Chair Long and Commissioner Vince Cox and Whitney and I are going to Tallahassee.
Oh, well, today.
Yeah.
It's important to go and talk to Senator Brandis and some others about
Yes.
some of the things that he's doing that hopefully will help us. You might have seen the article, another article in the paper this weekend about the Medicaid.
Yeah, he was actually doing something good.
Yeah.
Tell him thank you. Sorry. You're not taking notes over there, right?
It's indirect. Indirectly,
No,
it'll
but
be
that
very
could help.
positive, yeah. Because hopefully it'll get some more options for people on Medicaid. And Medicaid can pay for
Yeah.
transportation, and they will stop coming to Dartmouth.
Okay, well,
Great.
what is the regional resiliency, Cassandra?
I think we're taking that off, aren't we? Did we decide to take those off?
I think we decided to,
Have a chance to
Sarah, what is that?
change that.
I don't know, I was gonna ask you. No,
It's just the report.
we're working on our sustainability plans. I think it was, I don't know why it was called that, but we will at some point give an update on our sustainability plan.
I have a
Oh,
meeting
did
with
we
Susan
sign-
Glickman coming up on my calendar.
We signed the compact.
Have we signed the compact yet? Because you were one of the first.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
And, yeah,
Girl, do we have them down on our list, PSTA? Yeah, okay. All right, are we done?
I think we're done.
Anything else, anybody? Okay, then we are adjourned.
Jordan says she can't come.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, thanks.
Thanks for letting us know.
I know.
Have safe travels up to Tallahassee.
Good luck. So,
Somebody invited me to speak at a conference.
I did that, I did that one.
That's a long.
It's a
Like,
long
Tallahassee's
line.
long, but they go up to like.
That's out there.
Whoa.
Another place.